All right, welcome to today's Zoom call. It's 20th of February, and I took a picture of me walking to work today here. So there it is.
Beautiful.
That's about it. 8 inches of new snow today in Minnesota. We've already had 23, probably about 30 where I live, but officially 23 in February. So a lot of snow. I know everybody's been hit with some crazy weather. Um, So nothing new for everything around where you might live too. So today we have some questions to begin, so let's jump right in. The first question is there anything that we can do to reduce the negative effect of chemtrails? So chemtrails used to be a conspiracy theory, and only a select few people believe that they even existed. But now it has been, it's actually come out that they do exist, but they're only spraying these certain chemicals to help change weather patterns so that there won't be as many famines. Well, I don't know why they're spraying it over the United States. I haven't heard of any current famines going on in the last 100 years, except to the Dust Bowl days. So I'm not quite sure that that they're telling us the complete truth about it. So most people believe, and there's some documentation as far as proof goes, of different chemicals that are in these chemtrails. So I don't know where everybody stands in their thought process on them, but here is a picture that I just pulled off the internet real quickly of a plane flying showing no exhaust, and no, because the argument used to be, no, it's only uh, precipitation from the plane's exhaust that's causing these trails, not any chemicals that are sprayed. Well, here's a picture of a plane flying with no precipitation. Now, somebody might argue, well, they're not flying at the same height as the elevation as the other planes that went by, but um, recently you can Google the information. I'm not going to argue for or against, but you can Google the information that chemtrails actually do exist, and there are chemicals that are sprayed in the air. Quite possibly, maybe possibly, in order to try to make us sick so that we have to get on medication. I don't know. So we don't want to get into the whole conspiracy issue, but if these are chemicals that are then falling onto us, falling onto our soil, falling onto our food supply, how do we get rid of them? Well, I just recently ordered Chemtrails basic homeopath that we can use to make homeopaths from, so that it could be a detoxification tool. So that's one way we could get rid of them. Another way that we could get rid of them is to just continue to support detoxification. Now, I don't know of any of my patients that we are not supporting detoxification. So how do you support detoxification? How do you detox? Well, you look at the genetic pathway. So if you haven't taken a lot of time to look at the genetic pathways and really understand those pathways, if this is something you want to, I'm not saying everybody needs to geek out on this stuff, but you could go to our website. This is just a screenshot of our home page with hovered over our cancer protocols. And I circled this after I did the screenshot. It says Genes Tell Stories. And then you can click on that link. It has a initial page for genetics. And at the bottom right-hand corner of that page has a whole bunch of links to a whole bunch of genetic pages. And one of them is that Cancer Genes book, this right here, this picture right here, that is a video book, basically, a living video book. So as we create more genetic videos and there's more genetic information that comes out, we start doing more work on different genes that we pull out of your genetic profile. Those videos go into that page. So I would recommend that you look those up and look up the detoxification pathway genes, PON1 pathways, the NAT1, NAT2 pathways, the cytochrome P450 pathways, the videos on that. You could really geek out on that, and that will help you understand why you want to support those pathways. And you just have to look up in the air to give you even more consideration that you really want to support those pathways, because this is affecting us. So you ask the question, why are our cancer rates going through the roof? Why is our health constantly declining? Why is this the first generation that's going to have a shorter life expectancy than the last generation in the last, since recorded history? It's because we're exposed to an awful lot of toxins. How many are coming from chemtrails? I don't know, but they're certainly coming from our GMO foods. They're certainly coming from chemicals in our foods, additives, flavorings, colorings, all the different stuff that we're exposed to in our environment, that even if you live an organic, healthy lifestyle, you can't get rid of this kind of stuff. You're still exposed to poisons. So we're going to have, to answer the question, how do you get rid of these things? We're going to have a homeopath very soon that can help with that. But supporting the genetic pathways, the detoxification pathways are number one. If you have defects on the PON1 pathway for sure, and the cytochrome P450 pathways, you're not going to get rid of large chemicals very well. That's why you shouldn't be doing vaccinations, in my opinion. And you need to be even more diligent supporting those pathways because exposure is inevitable, no matter where you live or no matter how clean your lifestyle is. Second question came in. What's a good thing to do for nausea? So nausea can be a problem. Why do cancer patients get nausea? Google that one. You're going to come up with a lot of answers for that. But the biggest reason why cancer patients get nausea is if they have any intestinal cancer. So any intestinal cancer can cause a backup of bolus of food that could cause nausea. Different brain cancers can cause nausea because the nausea center is in the midbrain. That's in the deep part of the brain underneath the cerebrum of the brain. And a person can have nausea due to just food consumption. Food makes them feel sick. So there's multiple reasons why a person can have nausea with cancer. What do you do with it? Because nausea can cause all sorts of upset. You just don't feel good. You feel like you got the flu all the time. You feel like you don't, eating doesn't make it better. Sometimes does it make it worse. Sometimes I don't know what to eat. It gets very frustrating. It can bring a person down. So I know a lot about nausea because this is one of my major symptoms right here is nausea. So I get nausea all the time and I feel like I have the flu pretty much all the time. So what has helped me? We have two products that I think are really good. Personally, I have not used this, so I personally can't vouch for this, though I have some from patients that have used this and said that they thought it worked great. This product from Herb Farm. I use this Digize all the time. I have also used just straight peppermint when I didn't have Digize around. Digize has peppermint in it, has a little ginger in it, I believe. I've also used cinnamon bark. So cinnamon bark essential oil, I didn't put a picture of that on here, works a little bit differently. It's strong, astringent in your mouth, so it's a sharp oil, so it's a pretty hot oil. It's cinnamaldehyde is an aldehyde, so that is the chemical component of cinnamon. So the essential oil cinnamon bark has I think 90% of cinnamaldehyde, which is aldehydes are certain class of organic chemical. I use cinnamon bark as part of my protocol. I usually take a drop or two. That's all I take, 2 or 3 drops a day, because I think aldehydes can be beneficial to help kill cancer. But cinnamon also can help with me with some nausea. At home in the car, I usually carry a bottle of Digize with me. If I get nausea, I take a drop. Just for me, nausea comes from the gut, but remember, it's a neurological function. So it stimulated the nausea center in the brain. So for me, if I stay busy, so that's why I work 10 hours a day, 12 hours a day. If I stay busy and keep my mind busy, I don't think about it. So my mind isn't on it. and I don't think about it. It's usually when I relax and it's time just to kind of chill out and relax. I had a busy day. I'm going to sit down. Then I start feeling it worse. So I have a bottle of this sitting next to my chair at home that I usually sit in when I get home. So this has really helped me. You can't really take too much of this. I'd put the drops on your finger though, because it can be kind of a hot oil, and then put it in your mouth, on your tongue. This you can spray right in your mouth. So I would not drop this necessarily in your mouth until you get used to how much is coming out of the dropper. I'd start with putting it on your finger. But that's helped me a lot. That's helped me with nausea. Also with nausea, another help is make sure you're not constipated. So if you're constipated, you're going to have nausea. So you have to make sure you're not constipated, that you're having regular bowel movements. If you're not, make sure you're doing coffee enemas. Go to your constipation know-how sheet in your binder and make sure you deal with that appropriately as well. Okay, not mute anybody. You are all open for questions. So if anybody has questions, you can chime in right now. No questions? You're going to give me a short day today? What's the deal?
Dr. Connors, can you hear me?
I can.
Okay, hi, this is Talma. I am calling, I wanted to know about the, I know that you don't like us to be, at least me, on gluten or dairy. Could you go over that a little bit as to why that is, and how strict do you have to be? I'm about 90%, but I don't want to say I'm 100%.
Okay, so there's two reasons why. So number one, if a person, if we find that if a person has a gluten sensitivity or a dairy sensitivity, and let me define that. So if I believe a person has a true sensitivity, meaning that they have antibodies to gluten or antibodies to some sort of dairy, it's usually casein, it's the protein in dairy. If you have antibodies to a food and you are 90% gluten-free or dairy-free, you are 0% gluten-free, dairy-free. So, I mean, if you have antibodies to the food, you have to stay off of it completely, 100%, checking labels, checking cross-reactants. You have to stay off of it 100%. There's no cheating on your diet.
I understand that, but I don't think that's the case for me. It's just
right. So if we took you off gluten and dairy, which we often do with cancer patients, simply because gluten is inflammatory and dairy is inflammatory and mucus forming, then it's not as strict as you have to be if you have antibodies. And the only way to know if you have antibodies is if you do an antibody test, and that's running that Cyrex 10 panel. So we talked about that a little bit last week, that Cyrex 10 test. That's the only way to know if you have antibodies. So you can't really even know if you have antibodies. You can't say, well, if I eat it, it really doesn't bother me. Well, that doesn't necessarily mean you don't have antibodies. So just because you don't have a symptom when you eat it doesn't mean that you don't have antibodies. So the only way to know for sure is to do that test. If that's where you get back to, you got to weigh this out. You can't do everything, right? So, okay, well, I'm doing really well. My cancer's in a state of remission. I'm 90% good on my diet. Should I go and do the test? Well, maybe not then. Maybe you don't need to do the test. Another scenario, I'm not doing the greatest. My cancer seems to be growing. I'm not feeling well. Should I do the test? I'm 90% off of dairy and gluten. Maybe that's a case to do the test. Like I gave an example, I think, last week. We had a person who was eating something that they didn't feel like they had any sensitivity to, but they had major symptoms and the cancer was growing. We did the test, and one food that they were eating all the time that's actually a good for you food they had tons of antibodies too. So they went off that food and they felt so much better. I mean, their symptoms went down, everything went down, their inflammation went down, everything got better. So again, to reiterate, if you're doing really well and you're sticking to your diet 90-10 and you feel like you're improving and life is good, then you don't need to go any deeper maybe. So, but if it's the reverse of that, maybe you're going in the wrong direction, you feel like you're moving downwards, down the slope, then it can be important to do a little deeper testing to clarify any other dietary antibodies that you might have that could be could be root sources of inflammation that is ramping up and decreasing your immune response to the cancer itself.
Okay. Thanks.
Dr. Connors, can you trust like when your nose starts running and you have an allergy, like you're breathing in some allergens, but it starts running after you eat something? Can you trust that for being allergic to that?
No. So you can't trust that because if it's an IgG reaction, it's going to be a delayed response. So let's say I do have antibodies to gluten, let's pretend. And I eat gluten and it didn't really bother me. Well, if it's an IgG response to gluten, you might not have a response for 15 hours. So, well, I did have a runny nose right after I ate. Well, was it to something you ate? Was it an IgG reaction to something you breathed in, you pumped gas this morning? Was it to something, we just don't know those things, right? So you're not always going to get an immediate reaction, an IgM or an IgE reaction to an antigen right away. So that's not the antibodies that you have. So you can't always trust that. You can't always go, oh, I got a runny nose right after I ate. It must be something that I just ate. Well, I wish it was that easy. It's just not always that easy.
Okay. One more thing. Ion ProWave has a program for chemtrail detox.
Yep.
So I don't know if anybody else.
Yep, it does. So that's just using the frequencies, and that can help. So any of the Ion ProWaves detoxes can help. So that's another good thing. Use the Ion ProWave for that. Good comment. We had a question that came in and said, how much exercise is sufficient to maintain a healthy heart and cardio system without starving the body of oxygen and feeding the cancer? Great question. So it's going to the answer to that is going to be different for everybody. In order to help maintain a proper metabolism of all your cells, exercise is super important. So you have to be moving, you have to be burning glucose through your muscles so you don't have this excess glucose just feeding the cancer. And then the second question was, if I feel slightly winded, is that too much? No, I'd say that you're right at probably the right point. You want to feel slightly winded. You don't want to be so exhausted that you're wasted. And you don't want to go, okay, I'm going to start working out so that you work out so hard because you remember how you used to run 10 miles a day in college, and you start working out so hard that you produce so much lactic acid that you can't even get out of bed tomorrow morning. You overdid it. So you got to go slow. We don't want to produce all this lactic acid because that could end up being a feeder for the cancer. So I haven't worked out for I don't know how many years. Well, get up and just start doing just a walk, and then maybe only a block. Then maybe you're going to go 2 blocks. Then you're going to go 3 blocks. So whatever you're going to do, and you're going to lift some weights. You want to use your muscles. That's the key. It doesn't have to be getting a treadmill and going for a long walk. You could just do some calisthenics for 2 minutes. That would be a great start right there. I'm going to do some leg raisers. I'm going to stand and put my hands against the kitchen counter and I'm going to do side raisers of my legs, 10 on this side, 10 on that side. And then I'm going to do, 10 squats. And I'm going to do 10 jumping jacks. And that's all I'm going to start with. And I was a little tired after that because I'm really out of shape. That's okay. So maybe tomorrow you're going to do 10, and then by next week you'll be up to 15. So you want to be a little bit winded, but you don't want to be exhausted. You don't want to be producing a whole bunch of lactic acid. And the more you do it on a regular basis, you're going to be able to do a lot more, exercise and get much more benefit, much more call to energy to the muscles burning glucose so that there's less glucose circulating for your cancer, and you're not producing a lot of lactic acid. Good question.
There's many reasons, but one of the big reasons for your exercise is the burning of glucose, because it's glucose that's feeding the cancer.
Exactly. So I don't know if anybody heard that. I think the person said one of the biggest reasons for exercise is that you're burning glucose. So the glucose can't feed the cancer. Also, the second reason is that your muscles are calling for energy because your body works on a use it or lose it principle. It's very efficient. So I used to tell people when we deal with brain-based issues, your brain works on a use it or lose it principle. You only have so much gray matter. And if you're not going to keep learning new things and keep studying and keep growing, well, that's going to be just trimmed back. And your intelligence is going to go down. So if you want to keep your brain and keep from having dementia, and actually I should do a whole thing on dementia here, a whole Zoom call on dementia. If you want to prevent dementia, you got to keep learning. It's the same thing with your muscles. If you want to keep your muscles, then you got to use them, because otherwise your body goes, they're not using these biceps. Let's trim them down and we'll turn them into glucose. And guess who's going to have the first call to glucose? Your cancer. So you got to use your muscles so that you keep your muscle tone and the cancer can't eat them up. And you are going to burn excess glucose in your body, and you're going to keep a healthy glucose level, a healthy insulin level.
Dr. Connors?
Uh-huh.
It's Lisa.
Hello, Lisa.
So the lactic acid. So to get rid of lactic acid is your detox, correct? Like the saunas and your lymphatic?
Yes. So lactic acid is a byproduct of glycolysis. What's that? Glycolysis is how every cell takes glucose, puts it through a process called glycolysis in the mitochondria, and it kicks out 2 ATP. ATP is energy. And the end product of glycolysis is pyruvic acid. Now, pyruvic acid is poisonous. So pyruvic acid is converted to a next product called acetyl coenzyme A, which then goes into this thing called a Krebs cycle and kicks out a lot of energy. Except that conversion of pyruvic acid to acetyl coenzyme A is dependent upon an enzyme called pyruvate dehydrogenase, PDH enzyme. If I have defects in that enzyme, I don't do that very fast at all. If I have defects in that enzyme, in that gene that makes that enzyme, I'm not going to make a lot of PDH enzyme. And I had that since I was born. So I probably never was a big athlete because I got tired really easy. So I wasn't really a great runner. So I didn't join the track team. I didn't join the ball team or whatever, right? Also, that gene creates that PDH gene creates that PDH enzyme. The more you use it. So when I start running, even if I don't have any defects in that gene, when I was a kid and I start running, I'm going to be sore from running around. But then I keep running around and I get less sore. Same with you as an adult. I haven't worked out for years, so I'm going to start walking and I'm only going to walk a block. Then next week, I'm going to be up to 2 blocks. Then the third week, I'm up to 3 blocks. And I'm not sore at all, and I'm getting in better shape. Better shape from a physiological standpoint is defined as how fast can you convert pyruvic acid into acetyl coenzyme A. So when you say, I'm getting in shape, you don't say that anymore. Say, I'm able to convert pyruvic acid into acetyl coenzyme A much more efficient than I was 2 weeks ago. And I'm sure everybody will understand exactly what you're saying.
Okay, question.
So that if you can't convert pyruvic acid, what of pyruvic acid, of the total sum of pyruvic acid that you're producing through glycolysis from walking, that you cannot convert into acetyl coenzyme A, if you left it as pyruvic acid, you would die. So your body converts it to lactic acid. So lactic acid is only there because you don't convert pyruvic acid to acetyl coenzyme A very efficiently yet. So you'll make lactic acid. What does lactic acid do? It's also a poison, but it won't kill you. It'll just make you really sore. So the purpose of the soreness is so that you stop running because you are fat and out of shape.
Okay, so this is my, I don't, sometimes I get sore, but not really. So, okay, the only reason I bring up the lactic acid is
Hold on, I gotta manage.
Oh, you do.
I don't know who's making that noise.
because when I
Down
get
here in Guatemala.
Go ahead.
a massage,
Yep.
and I do kind of go regularly for a massage monthly. She always, and for years, have said you have a lot of lactic acid, a lot of waste buildup, like just crunchy stuff in my shoulders and legs, wherever. Because I can't say, like, say we do a 8-mile bike ride. Yeah, I'm a little sore the next day, but my husband will say he's really sore, so I don't think it's,
Well,
I don't know.
just because you're a massage therapist, first of all, you can't palpate lactic acid, okay? So that's just what she has been trained to say by her trainer who taught her massage therapy. No offense to her, but you can't feel lactic acid. So she can feel where it might build up and you could have a trigger point, but that's not solely lactic acid. That's tissue exudate, that's waste from cellular debris that could build up as a trigger point. That's not solely lactic acid. So don't confuse our terms here completely. You'll know if you have lactic acid because you're sore after a workout.
Okay.
Now,
and
if you push the boundaries, so you're used to, you could do an 8-mile ride, no problem, but next week you do a 16-mile ride, you're going to have lactic acid from that.
Okay.
Because you pushed the boundaries of that conversion of pyruvic acid to acetyl coenzyme A, and the outcome was it dumped more into lactic acid. So there's nothing wrong with pushing that gently. That's how you could get in shape and get better use of your muscles and better efficiency. But you don't want to push it hard where you can't get out of bed tomorrow. You went too hard.
Okay. Yeah. So then I just learned something, because for years it's been lactic acid or metabolic waste, which you said it could be that, but I was, oh, this lactic acid, I got all this lactic acid, and I'm not really sore because I do a lot. I walk, I yoga, I bike.
Yeah. So what I'll do, Lisa, is I'll send you a picture of me so you can see what fat and out of shape looks like. Perfect.
Do your leg lifts while you're talking to us right now.
There you go. There you go. I'm working out.
Okay. Oh, thank you.
You're very welcome.
Dr. Connors, can I just make sure I get this right? A little bit of soreness is okay because you're pushing yourself. But if you can't get out of bed without hurting, then that's when you push too far.
Right. And I use that can't get out of bed maybe a little bit too much. If you're really sore, you got to really balance it. You know, there's nothing wrong with a little bit of soreness because you are trying to increase your conversion ratio, but you don't want to get too sore. You want to go slow with this, and we're not in a race. We're not training for the next Boston Marathon. This is about life and being able to sustain a lifestyle. So some of us could get easily like hyped up about, okay, I'm going to get in shape. And then it's easy to fall off the wagon because you're trying to bite off more than you could chew. You're better off, I think, if we go slow and have, you know, shallower expectations on ourselves so that we don't end up, you know, too quick to quit.
Okay, thank you.
Dr. Connors, we have used activated charcoal for the nausea.
Yep.
Are we losing a lot of nutrients in doing that?
No, I think that's just fine too. So activated charcoal can be beneficial. There's other things too. I know there's people that use zeolite for it. Sometimes just eating something will help. For me, sometimes if I just get some food in my stomach, sometimes if I don't eat anything, it helps. So it's just weird. I can't put a finger on it all the time. It's difficult to deal with sometimes. I know one of the bigger things is one of the things that had bothered me the most. If I'm just riding in the car, that just a little bit of bumping like that, it's like, oh my gosh. So so if we ever go on a driving trip or something like that, I take my Digize with me for sure. But other than that, one of the biggest thing that helps me is to try to just get my mind off of it.
Thank you.
All right, I think we'll call it a night. It's been a half hour. I will get this saved and up on Facebook for others. Thank you for participating. Thanks for your questions, and love you all, and I'll be praying for all of you.
Thank you, Dr. Connors.
Thanks so
Bye-bye
much,
now.
Dr. Connors.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Connors.
You bet. Bye-bye.
Bye.